What makes a character interesting? A lot of people will come upon this question, and the way that they will answer it is based on maybe their personality, their ideology, their character design, the powers that they were blessed with, or the powers that they worked hard to achieve, experience, maybe how well they relate to you as a person. Maybe if you're watching a movie or television show, you'll say their voice acting, their mannerisms, the way that they fight, all of those come together to make a key character that everybody likes to see. But what if I told you that there was a free card into making an interesting and likable character, and that is to just slap some ego on them? Yes, this is a delicate procedure though, because if you don't do it properly, it might end up with that character being very much disliked. And honestly, if that suits your story, you might have hit the jackpot. But if you do it well, how do you do it well? Well, it entails you controlling the glaze, because ego characters are based on self-glaze and glaze from everybody around them. And to break it down a bit more so that you understand, there are two particular types of ego and how it works, because some people think that it can only place on villains. That is not the case. When it comes to something called the awesome ego, these are characters that are so absurdly confident in themselves, so larger than life, that their ego becomes somewhat of a superpower. But the key thing here is their confidence, right, in themselves is competence as well. The spectacle or the charisma that they have, right? Their appeal to everybody around them agrees with their opinion. They're bragging, but they have a right to. It's kind of like that thing on TikTok, that trend where it's like, I love characters who can talk smack and back it up, right? Characters like Nightwing, Spider-Man, Invincible, kinda. Wally West, Flash. Those kind of everyman characters are like that, but to varying degrees, and a lot of those characters actually wouldn't fit under, the ego category. The second one that a lot of us like is the hidden depths ego person. I know, I said that kind of weirdly, huh? But it's somebody who, despite all of their superiority or their showmanship, right, they have a different function. The ego here is an armor and a mask of their true emotions. Under all of that, if you peel it back, the pretenses, those are stripped away. We see insecurity, trauma, or maybe they're very tender, they're a loving person, but they put on this front so that they can protect their heart, right? These characters lead to a lot of moral complexity that we see throughout the story, and eventually it leads to a lot of great character development. That is why we love these characters. But I know I threw a bunch of words at you guys, so to break it down further, 5 things. First, it's a very instant shorthand of a character. You learn a lot of a character very fast if they have ego, their ambitions, their strategy, their dominance, right? All of that works to really get you into the mind of the character right away. 2, there is a conflict engine. If there's 2 egos that collide with each other that are very big, right? 2 big egos in a room, immediate friction just like that. Comedy can be there, spectacle can be there, also a lot of inner conflict, right? The pull between pride and vulnerability. 3, they're also an emotional lever. What does that mean? Well, if their pride is wounded or something happens to them, it will lead to them being very emotional, them wanting to train more to get better. Or maybe they also have people that they love. Egotistical characters are very emotional behind all of that. When somebody that they love gets hurt, it leads to them locking in like there's no tomorrow. 4, a lot of spectacles there and a lot of catharsis, right? For an awesome ego character in particular, it gives audiences a lot of charismatic, quotable moments, hidden depths, right? A lot of that can be there. A lot of heartbreak or catharsis when a big payoff occurs for that character, when the mask drops off. And 5, moral ambiguity and identification. We admire confidence, but we also empathize with their vulnerability, right? We like seeing the character's facade collapse, whether it's through, of course, a villain doing that, or maybe their allies, their lover, or someone close to them. Ego balances stories, right, with admiration and sympathy. We cheer when they're absolutely at their highest, and then we cry when they are brought back down. But without further ado, let's get into my favorite ego characters. Some of them will be very obvious, others will be, oh, I didn't think about that, but for the most part, none of these should be a surprise to you. Leave your favorite ego characters down in the comments down below, and let me stop wasting our time. First characters up. Who do you guys want to talk about first? Let me think. You know what? Let's talk about Ooh, my mic just flew down. Okay, take two. You know what? Let's talk about Bruce. Now, Bruce here, Batman, he isn't somebody that I would typically label as an egocentric character. Very much the most methodical and just intellectual man that there is, right? He's not going to try to like outdo an opponent by underestimating them. He will overestimate them, feel out their abilities, and make sure that they are who they are, right? He can tell if you're a level 100 ninja or you're just a crook trying to get by, but he's not going to assume things out of nowhere, because assuming stuff as a human can get you killed, right? That is not why he is the master prep time strategist of the DC universe. He makes sure to have precautions, but in terms of his graphic designer, he knows for a fact that he created the best branding in the DC universe. He will slap a bat on anything and make sure that everybody around him knows that he has bat-themed whatever, so that you know his calling card, you know that he paid for this part of the Watchtower, you know where your medical coverage is coming from. You think that he ever goes to like the Justice League Watchtower, just anywhere in the Hall of Justice, and he reminds heroes that he paid for all of this? He probably does, just to be a bit of an A. But anyways, let's get back on topic. Of course he has his batarangs, the Batmobile, which honestly, the Batmobile barely has anything resembling a bat, but you know, go off, King. I will agree that things that are shaped like a bat should obviously be like that, but even looking at the recent 2025 Batman run, it's just so funny seeing what he puts his label on. He says, I have bat boots, that doesn't even have a bat on it, right? Tim Drake uses bat boots that allows him to bounce off the walls like a ninja side-scroller. It's really cool. The second thing that got me kind of laughing is that he has something called bat bandages. Bandages that have a bat on it. And yes, while that is as egocentric as you could possibly come, it does have some really cool side factors, right? It's a pressure dressing, puts some pressure on the wound, and it has a wound sealant and coagulant. So that, you know what? I think that's technologically advanced enough for you to put your label on it. But he also has stuff that doesn't deserve to be there. He has a bat bucket, where he put a bat logo on it so that you could barf. Why? He also has a bat dash Turi, a battery with a bat logo on it. I want to see Batman in the future go through some marketing investments and actually try to make some products and sell it to the citizens of Gotham. Do you know how famous and well-liked Batman would become to the people of Gotham? Like, honestly, they already glaze him. If he had a product line of very good perfume and cologne, bans. You're just printing money at that point, but Bruce obviously would never do that. He uses money for more, you know, chivalrous purposes that are more based on helping others. But if I were Batman, everyone asks, what would you do first if you were Batman? I would make more money. That is why I'm not Batman. Pretty much an unusual pick, huh? It really is one of my favorite tropes in Batman comics, right? Always a blast, always a very funny and just great comedic timing whenever it is used. Great trope, I love it a lot. The second pick, let's talk about Tony Stark from the MCU. This character very much influenced his comic book version. He always had ego before in the source material, but Tony in the MCU took it to another level, and eventually it led to that bleeding into the comics for better or for worse. But this entire performance and the character writing as it is hinges entirely of RDJ's performance, because that right there made him a household icon. He's just so likable despite being so full of himself. But here, what makes it really interesting is that it's propulsion, right? His confidence. It's not just his personality. From the moment we see him, Tony treats every room like he's the smartest, most capable person there, and the wild part is he usually is, and he does it without being too obnoxious. There's little pokes and jabs here and there. And that is why his ego plays so well with audiences. He isn't bragging into thin air. He's showing you exactly why he believes he's great. The fast talking, the showmanship, the way that he pokes people to get a reaction. It gives every scene a pulse, right? If you want to see a living and breathing movie, any scene with RDJ in it with his co-stars is going to show you exactly that. That right there is passion on the big screen. Tony makes the story move because he refuses to sit still or think small, which leads to a lot of disasters, to say the very least. But, you know, he talks big, right? He follows it up with results, whether that's, you know, building a suit in a cave or reverse engineering alien tech overnight. He is that guy. Put respect on my boy Tony's name. But the real reason this works, it's a shield. Every joke, every boast, every dramatic entrance that he drops in with some, you know, metal music, he's covering something that people at least don't know about, or they're just not going to talk about. The guilt, the fear, and the pressure of being the person that everybody thinks. He acts invincible because he never truly feels safe. Of course, he was a weapons manufacturer, and obviously, you know, trying to live up to Howard Stark surviving Afghanistan, realizing that his intentions hurt people All of that sits underneath his bravado, adding another layer to his character. The MCU shows that this, right here, without ever killing the fun of who he is. He gets panic attacks in Iron Man 3, but the dialogue not only makes it engaging, but very, I don't want to say funny, but we're able to relate to Tony more as a character, throwing jokes at very bad moments, trying to keep himself afloat through his obviously very egotistical words, but it's never anything that gets you going like, oh my goodness, why did he say that in the first place, right? He does all of this to drown out the fear. It's a coping mechanism that he's mastered, and sometimes even forgets that it's a mask itself. That balance is why it works. The guy who talks like a literal rock star, playing that music every single time he makes an entrance, but he's running from his own worst thoughts, right? That is what makes him really compelling. And as the MCU went on, we see how that ego shifts, right? From self-promotion to self-preservation to genuine sacrifice, right? Tony pulls in the all-in-play, right? He's gonna let somebody crawl over him if it means their safety. He's not gonna cut the wire, as he said at Captain America all those years ago. He eventually outgrows a lot of his bad habits, and he becomes a father figure and a father to many, a brother, a friend, but he still stays the same fast-talking menace that we saw in the first movie, a rage baiter until the very end. Moving our way to anime, let's talk about Vegeta, one of the greatest ego-driven characters of all time. Fiction, all of fiction, because his pride isn't just attitude, it works as a way that, let me just go through this a little bit, right? It's literally his identity. So, Vegeta acts like royalty at the beginning, right? Because he is royalty. He carries himself like he is the last honorable piece of Saiyan culture, and everything he does is fueled by this unshakable belief that he was born to stand at the top. That's why his arrogance never felt pointless. When Vegeta talked big, it's not empty bragging, it's a worldview. It was how he was raised, it was how he survived, and how he keeps himself from collapsing under the weight of everything that he lost and he will continue to lose in the future. His ego is something that keeps him moving forward. Even when the battle itself knocks him down harder than the last, this is why fans love him. He's very proud, very loud, and stubborn to a fault. He even gets humiliated a lot and overshadowed, but he comes back even stronger. Mama did not raise no quitter. His ego, as we've seen with a lot of other characters, is built on, as I've said, trauma, but he uses it as a tool. Instead of breaking, he formed this unshakable pride as armor. He watched his entire race get wiped out, like out of his face, but he's like, you know what? I'm not going to lose myself. He became a father, he protected his family. One quote, if I'm going to quote him a little bit, Aristotle style, he said, spend most of your life ruled by another, watch your race dwindle to a handful, and then tell me what has more meaning than your own strength. How can we not root for somebody who's been through so much? And then this directly transitions to his own evolution. What makes Ultra Ego, his new form, so perfect for him? Goku, he gets Ultra Instinct, a calm, detached, almost divine transformation, right? He gets stronger by the more attacks that he evades. Vegeta gets the opposite, a form that feeds on his pride, his aggression, his battle lust, his refusal to back down, never. Yeah, Ultra Ego works because it's not just another power-up here, it's Vegeta weaponizing the very thing that defined him from day one. It becomes a literal fuel for his attacks. The more damage he takes, the more he leans into his Saiyan nature, the stronger he becomes. He embraces who he truly is and becomes more powerful. He becomes stronger by embracing who he truly is, right? Not trying to be like Goku, not chasing someone else's path by forging his own path. Finally, through this form, he became someone who is truly himself. The ultimate statement. He doesn't need to change by abandoning his ego. He changes by mastering it. That was the lesson that he needed at the end of the day, and what has led him to become Goku's equal. But how about we bring it over to the side of the villains, and let's talk about one of my favorite characters that got so much justice done to his name by James Gunn, by Nicholas Hoult, by everybody involved in Superman 2025, and that is my GOAT, Lex Luthor, somebody who should be in everybody's top 5, or in my opinion, top 3 favorite comic book villains of all time. He's so consistently good in everything that he's in, except of course maybe BVS, we don't talk about that, but I want to open this up with a quote from Superman Birthright by Mark Waid. And this really gets to the heart of the character. He's like, I'm the only sane inmate on Asylum Earth. I'm not eager to hand tomorrow over to an interplanetary extremist with laser eyes. There's only room on this world for one leader, Superman. When I'm finished with you, every last gibbon out there will know you for the menace you are, Spider-Man, and they'll realize that Lex Luthor is their savior. Talk about ego, huh? It's very mythic in nature because he believes himself to be the smartest man on the planet, and while he might be, there's some contention there. However, according to his monologue, he is the greatest criminal mind of our time. And yes, while he does do this crime stuff, he does it in his mind for a purpose. You can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs mentality. He genuinely believes that the world would run smoother if he was in charge, and he has the intelligence and the resources to make you believe it too. Imagine this though, not even imagine, he's done it in front of our very eyes. He tricked all of us to believe that he is a literal threat to godlike beings. He is as human as they come, a literal man of bones, blood, and muscle who could be flicked off the planet and turned into a s'more in the sun. But somehow, he got all of us to believe, through very convincing means, that his arrogance is literally valid, right? He's able to do all of this. How is he able to fight against a Kryptonian and be his arch nemesis? He has nothing that could be used other than his technology, but he uses it to his advantage. He refuses to see himself as a lesser, going against somebody who's basically a god. Superman, even when the universe puts him against somebody who can bench press planets, his ego fills that gap. You feel me? His pride is the shield that lets him say, I'm still better. But the deeper layer is that Lex's ego is built on 1. Obsession, 2. Envy, and 3. Insecurity. He cannot stand the idea of somebody being above him. Think about it. When he was in Metropolis, he made entire skyscrapers with his letter in the sky. Then Superman comes in and takes all of his press. He can't believe that somebody could be that high above him, especially if they didn't, in his eyes, earn it. Superman holds power Lex will never have, and that fact digs into him like a thorn. He can't remove it. It's just going to be stuck on his soul, and he won't accept it like a normal person would do. He turns that insecurity into an ideology that I don't even know if he believes, but he says it, right? He tells himself and the world that Superman is a threat. Nobody should have that power. A true hero should be human. Superman holds humanity back from saving them from their failures. We can never evolve. We can never push forward. He's a man terrified of being forgotten, so it turns into a bunch of speeches and philosophy that eventually gets overshadowed and proven ordinary by the strength and the presence and the aura of Superman himself. His ego is self-protection. He can't allow himself to be second best. I'm assuming, I don't exactly know because, I'm a bit of a fraud, but I'm pretty sure this has to come somewhere from emotional scarring of when he was a child. But either way, he overcompensates, right? He rewrites reality around this idea that he is that rightful apex, that apex predator of humanity. That's why his ego works so well. It's not as loud as Vegeta, it's not as playful as Tony Stark, but it's very personal and cold. The mannerisms that he has, his calm voice, his very condescending smirk. Whenever this man smirks, I want to slap his bald head. But from all of the things that we see him do, he's very precise in his wording, in his posture. Everything is very calculated. He doesn't exactly shout out his greatness unless he's 10 steps ahead of you and he knows that he's going to win. And when that does happen, then he behaves that he's so much better. He acts as if that was an established fact. With his whole chest, he believes that he could have been humanity's savior if only Superman hadn't shown up first, and that is where his deep hatred comes from. But what if we talked about the same character in terms of course, the machinations and the way that they, perceive the world, and let's see it on the other side of the comic book spectrum, of course that being Dr. Doom from Marvel. And why I love this guy so much is that he has a reason to be egotistical, because imagine you were in his shoes. Obviously, his ego started from, when he was younger, in college, all of that rivalry with Reed Richards, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, if you earned or you had a nation under your feet, a whole country, Latveria, right, that you ruled, and then on top of that, you had servants, you had people under you that praised you, that glazed you for no reason. It's not even no reason. You're actually providing better lives for all of your citizens, and they have reason to do that. It is feeding your ego. It multiplies it by 10, by 20, every single time you set foot in your nation. You might be hated overseas, but as soon as you come back, you get a Kaioken multiplier in terms of ego. It's really interesting how he perceives the world. He sees himself as the only person who can and must shape the world. Even in the beginning, he carries himself as royalty. As I've said before, he owns a damn nation. Why would he not? Every setback, though, because he has a lot of plans, a lot of, bigger ideas, every setback that happens to those plans, he sees it as a personal insult to his genius. And, well, why would you not, right? You mastered science and magic, and you managed to combine both of them. You are on a different league. And the fact that you don't have any superpowers or any magical base to work on, you are built different. You should be a main character. He handles himself as a main character. The reason why I love Doom so much is that he works kind of like a Batman or Superman figure. And what I mean by that is that he is the wild card, a character that if they're there at some worldwide ending threat, you feel a bit safer that they will find some sort of way to save the day. I can't be the only one who believes that, right? But I believe that Doom sees the universe as broken, and through only his mind and his willpower, he'll be able to do it no matter the cost. But underneath all of that lies a very deep sense of entitlement and rage, of course, from personal trauma, from the rivalry with Reed Richards, and, the fate of the world and everything else. Every failure or slight becomes proof that the universe is incapable of guiding itself. He sees it as a chaotic and flawed system. He's the only one with the abilities and prowess to assert his dominance. He proves it again and again that his ego must take action, and through that action will a better world occur. There was even a time I'm pretty sure it was under Ryan North's penmanship, he wrote a situation where the world agreed with Doom more than the Fantastic Four. And I don't know if you should ever do that for your superhero book, but the fact that that stands tells you a lot about Doom, because he does not see himself as a villain. He sees himself as a necessary acquirement, an inevitable force in the universe that must be recognized and obeyed. And I would expect nothing less from a man who lost godlike abilities and said that it was beneath him. A man who fought the Beyonders, a race of reality warpers, and referred to himself in third person and told them that when he's done with them, he will erase their name from history. He taunted him. He said, "Fools, I am Doom, the Destroyer. I have broken worlds to taunt you. I've shattered universes to mock you. I have taken what is yours and made it mine." He faced straight into a reality warping crack and rift in the universe and said this with a straight face. There is no bluff behind these eyes. Tell me if Doom doesn't believe what he's saying. Gojo, you see yourself as effectively a god, as an angel, and I see why, but I just get so pressed. I'm not even pressed, but the saying, I'm just falling apart at his aura, but the saying, with the sole exception of Satoru Gojo, is such glaze. But I guess it's warranted, right? The entire phrase is based on the fact that, yes, this seems to be impossible, but one person has done it. But I guess it is justified because he was born with not only the limitless technique, but also the 6 eyes, which, if you don't know what any of that means, it's basically his power set that's unique specifically to him. And in his bloodline, or his, generation, his family, he was the first sorcerer born with those abilities, those overpowered hacks abilities, for the first time in approximately 400 years. So he is, by and large, biologically special and better than everyone else. He just exudes absolute confidence, bordering on arrogance, and he knows it because he is the strongest sorcerer alive. He never hesitates to show it either, right? Very flashy for the audience, and that is the narrative engine, because he walks into the story completely sure, teases his enemies, plays with them, toys with them, uses their body as ways to fight, literally turning yourself against you, because he is completely aware that he is untouchable. If you don't know what the limitless technique is, it's like an invisible force field around his entire body, in layman's terms, that prevents anybody from hitting him. If you hit him, you'll be stopped. If you throw something at him, it will freeze in front of him. he doesn't have to worry about damage usually unless it is through a curse technique that breaks through that barrier, and that is very, very rare. And he outclasses so many people, but they still try to run the fade. Why? There's no reason to do that, especially considering that he isn't just all power. He's very strategic, and he can be very serious when he wants to be, and a literal psychopath. Have you seen this man's eyes, the way he speaks, and the way he laughs and smiles? Like, this guy, he could literally destroy an entire city if he wanted to, and from an outsider perspective, looking at how he fights, you would think it's completely reasonable. Through, of course, his morals, he would never do that, but Gojo's personality is full of a bunch of contrasts, oscillating between very lighthearted to deadly serious to I'm about to turn into my best Joker impression. He has all of that bundled in his persona, and that is what makes him so complex as a character, while simultaneously being seen as a blunt by the numbers and just overall simple person, right? At the end of the day, what is there not to like from a character that knows that he is completely invincible? Like, Mark Grayson wishes he had this superpower. I wish I had it too. Do you imagine the amount of like paper cuts that I would never get? Can you imagine the amount of stubbed toes in our lives that would just be forsaken from existence? The amount of utility that Limitless has is actually absurd. Imagine a wine glass dropping onto your white shirt and stopping in midair. I would be as egotistical as him too. I would be immune to all of life's inconveniences. And I know that sounds like small fry compared to the great level cursed demons that he fights on a day-to-day basis, but like, this is the utility that would make me feel like I'm just that guy. Like, I don't know if it says something about me, but to bring it all back, he is the guy who looked at the greatest curse in the entire universe, Sukuna, and said, nah, I'd win. Full straight face, literally like a meter stick, nothing would dissuade his confidence. But I told you guys, sometimes you have to look up to these ego characters regardless of the aftermath of what he said here happened. I've used that phrase for whenever I got my ADMs, whenever I have to do work, whenever I have to pull an all-nighter. Just say it with me, guys. Nah, I'd win. There we go, simple as that, and now your mindset is a bit diluted. Congratulations, but you have to be a bit delusional to make it in this world. And finally, to wrap this video off, let's talk about, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best representation of a hidden depth ego, and that is Bakugo from MHA. He's very loud, brash, relentlessly proud in every sense of the word, explosive by all means, but beneath that very combustible exterior, he's a very deeply layered character. On the surface, he's all fire, aggressive, confident. He's the first person to declare that he is explosive king god. I don't even know, something murder dynamite. All of that mouthful is his name, and get it right, because he will kill you, quote unquote. But he knows how much of a prodigy he is, how much effort that he put into his quirk, the fact that in the beginning, if he uses power too much to such a high extent, he will actually hurt his arms and his nerves, and he might actually break it, but through consistent effort, he's built up his strength. All of that really works together to show why he's so confident, especially in front of somebody like Midoriya, somebody that he considered to be a longtime rival, but struggles to fully understand why he ever did that, considering he was quirkless for such a huge portion of his life. What makes him compelling is his performance, the fact that he's trying to prove to the world, and most importantly himself, that he matters, that he's enough. Very early on, his pride looks like simple cockiness, but as the story progresses, moments of vulnerability start to slip through the cracks. The way that he grapples with his own feelings of inadequacy, right? When he sees Deku surpass him, when he gets captured by the League of Villains, the guilt he carries after hurting others emotionally, to believing that he's the reason that All Might lost his powers, and the rare moments where he admits fear or self-doubt. These glimpses show you that Bakugo's ego isn't superficial. It's as much of a persona as it is true to himself, and that contradiction is what makes him so interesting. Kind of like the Batman Bruce Wayne type of dynamic. It's very hard to explain, but if you're able to wrap that idea that Batman is true and Bruce Wayne is also true, and that makes a whole, then you understand how I perceive Bakugo. And in the latest season, oh boy, the way that he fought All For One, I won't spoil it because that got me out of my seat. But seeing him become the literal final boss against the actual final boss of the series for a good portion of it was so good to see. And even though that version of All For One wasn't anywhere near his peak or the strongest, it's really cool to see somebody like him get a dub, to be in zen, to be focused, and to really have an awakening, not in terms of just his power becoming stronger and getting new abilities, but in terms of perspective. And that one moment we saw him and Deku lock. Like, both of them were so in sync, they got each other to a T that there was no words that needed to be spoken. The development that we saw between Deku and Bakugo through the war was just exponential, seeing him study his opponents and really trying to be the best version that he can be, to be the layup that his teams needed so that he can take and deliver all the damage possible so that everybody could fulfill their jobs. You know, a lot of people didn't really like him back in the day, even though I always loved him because his VA, both sub and dub, were killing it. It just gave him so much personality that I just couldn't help but watch. That's what makes Ego characters so good, is that their presence fills up the screen, and we can't help but root for these characters when they're fighting for the side of good. But when they're fighting for the side of evil, that is when we start to second guess if we should be rooting for the hero or if it's wrong that we're rooting for the villain, because they're just so cool. But what do you guys think? Who are your favorite egotistical characters in fiction? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure I left out a lot of them. I left out somebody like Wally West Flash. He always says, "I'm the fastest man alive" in his intro, and he will continuously jab you both physically and mentally throughout the battle. He is that much of a rage baiter. Spider-Man, I guess, kind of could fit in there. Nightwing as well. Dio Brando, if we want to talk about a very absurd villain, he is definitely up there. He's very charismatic, despite being quite literally the biggest representation of a monster there is. Booster Gold and all of his many brand deals that he places all over his suit, proclaiming that he's the greatest hero that you never heard of. Even somebody like Thor and his very holier-than-thou, boastful language is enough to get all of us entranced on our screens. But yeah, guys, what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Remember to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. And yeah, see you all later. Take care. Deuces. Peace.